So as a property manager, what does Patriot Property Management do for your clients?
Absolutely. So we handle everything from the beginning to the end of a rental process. So that means we are going to help find a tenant. We are going to list your property. We are going to make recommendations and give advice if we think that maybe some painting or some repairs would really make a difference on the price point for your property. We'll also discuss the rental price. We will move the tenant in, handle all your maintenance, and then also help out with the move out. So when the move out comes, we do the inspection, the deposit. You don't have to handle anything.
There are a couple different types of classifications for rentals, right? So there's going to be, like you were mentioning, long-term rentals. For insurance purposes, most of the time we're seeing anything 6 months or longer. And then you've got your short-term rentals, which we're discussing more or less the Airbnb, VRBOs. The important thing to remember on this one is there are some companies that will do rental properties, but they do not want Airbnb or short-term rentals. So we need to make sure that when we're discussing this with our clients are honest with us and let us know exactly how the property is being used, because there's some people thinking, oh, I can get a good rate if I just finagle my way into this policy, but that particular carrier may not want that type of a business. And if they find out that the property is being used in that sort of way, they may reject coverage if there's a claim. So we want to make sure that we're as truthful as possible when we're answering questions about how a property is going to be used, so that we can place you with the right carrier so that everybody's covered all the way around. There's secondary homes that people use for Airbnbs and VRBOs, and we need to make sure we make that distinction. So sometimes people are going to buy a secondary home, and if we don't know that they're going to be renting it out short term, we may place them with the wrong carrier that doesn't want that type of business. Right. So we want to make sure that we put you with the right carrier. So if that's something that you're buying the home for, please make sure you let your insurance agent know that it's going to be a secondary home, but you're also going to be renting it out to try to make sure it's used and kind of try to pay for it a little bit. Vacant rentals. So we see this a lot where people buy a property and they're going to do significant renovations, not just some paint and whatever, but they're like tearing stuff down and they're making significant improvements because maybe it's an older home, and they want to make sure that they fix it up and make it nice. If a property is not going to have anybody in it for it's going to be vacant for 60 days or more, we need to write there's a vacant policy that we need to write. Or some carriers provide a landlord type of a policy with an endorsement that it can be vacant. Work's going to start being done on it within 60 days. But we can't just write a regular landlord policy if that home is going to be vacant for longer than 60 days. Otherwise, if something does happen, there will not be coverage. And it's going to cause problems for you as a homeowner if you don't disclose the right information, or if you try to work your way into a policy that's not intended for that type of a use. So please make sure you let your insurance agent know if you are not going to be renting it out right away, or if it's going to be vacant for longer than 60 days.
We had a tenant in place. Things were going good. We're 6 months in, and there was a huge leak, like washer leak, inches of water. And when we called the insurance was not under the impression that it was a rental at all. And huge red flag. It cost the owner thousands of dollars. It was not good at all. So I have seen that firsthand, and it happens innocently.
That was a good segue, because that was my next type of property that we're going to talk about, is people that have a primary home and they decide to buy somewhere else and convert it into a rental property, or vice versa. Maybe they have a rental property and they're going to move into as their primary home. And you got to let your insurance agent know, because a primary home insurance and a landlord property insurance, those are not the same policy. There are a lot of different coverage, and so there's a lot more risk when it comes to rental properties, or not primary, anything other than primary residence. And so we need to make sure that we underwrite that correctly and have the right policy for that. But there's also differences in coverages too, so that's really, really important. Make sure you disclose when you're changing the type of use of a property. One thing to mention about up north is there is a lot of trees up there. There's a lot more fire risk. So options become limited up north, especially during the peak fire season. So we're starting to see some carriers come in and say, hey, we're stopping writing policies, binding restrictions. As you start coming into properties that have a lot higher risks, sometimes you have less options. So they might be a little more expensive, but at the same point, you want to get the policy that's going to fit your needs. And a couple $1,000s a year is a lot better than paying a couple $100,000 a year if you don't have the right insurance.
Correct.
Why is it important to use a property manager for rental properties?
The simple reason is liability. Everyone goes into renting, especially if they want to be their own landlord. Let's say it's just one property for this example. They think it's very easy because, oh, their friend wants to move in, and oh, their friend, Zells them every month, and everything's gravy. Well, everything's always gravy until it's not. And no landlord really thinks about what to do when something bad happens. Like, are you prepared for if they were to just leave, abandon the property? What's your next steps? If it's, Friday at 10 p.m. and the tenant calls and there's a flood, what is your next step? Are you prepared to handle that? Are you ready for that? Part of being a property management is giving owners their freedom back. Like, I would even say that a property owner that acts as their own landlord, that's a second job. That's a 24-hour small business second job. You got to be available at any time for any of their needs that may come up.
Right.
And we take that out. Like, we make it easy. Typically 9 times out of 10, when a situation arises, that's when that owner actually goes seeking for a property manager for the help, for the assistance.
When it's too late.
Yes, exactly. Before it's too late. I do recommend it. We handle everything from the beginning to the end, and we take that worry away for that. We are the ones who handle the emergency calls. We're the ones who handle the we have someone currently that, we're not sure if they're still living there. And that's something that happens all the time. It doesn't happen every day, but when it does happen, we know what to do.
And you told me in a previous conversation, there was a situation where someone accepted partial payment.
Yes.
And that can get you in trouble too. There's certain things that people I didn't know that. There's certain things that people don't know that can get them in trouble.
Oh, absolutely. And you see it everywhere. So for example, the partial payment, if you have a tenant that, let's say, is paying you over Zelle or Venmo, those apps are tricky because you can't prevent payment. So if I'm accepting rent from you and you only pay me $5 of rent, I can't not accept that because I go through Zelle and I can't block that.
Right.
But now I've accepted rental proceeds from you. So now I can no longer go to eviction that month because I've already accepted money from you.
Can they still collect the other amount that wasn't paid? Yes. Okay, so but absolutely. You can't, like you said, it just prevents it delays the process.
Yeah.
So now it's more of a payment plan that you're working with them instead of, hey, it's been 5 days. Here's your 5-day notice, pay or quit, and start the eviction process. Another common one I see owners make is, especially like if they manage their own property, is they'll stop by the property unannounced. And that is a huge no-no. Oh, I'm dropping off a faucet for the handyman tomorrow, or I'm dropping off, supplies, whatever it may be. You cannot do that. You cannot go on the property. You cannot, knock on the door, go inside. You are invading their space because when they rent the property, they have the right to quiet enjoyment of that property. So when you do that without a 48-hour notice, they could come back and sue you for up to 2.5 times the amount of rent. All it takes is a confirmation, a call, an email. I always prefer in writing. I definitely recommend if it's like same day and I'm like, hey, can I come pick up that lockbox?
Right.
In writing, if you have a yes, you can absolutely go over there. But if I don't give them that warning and then I go over there, I'm now violating their privacy and their rights.
Oh, there's people that live local and they're if they're self-managing, they can stop by. It's not hard to stop by, but insurance companies like when properties are maintained by property management companies because there is a higher probability of the property being looked after and maintained also. I might live a couple miles away from my property, but life gets busy. I may not stop by as much as I should be. And it's important to keep eyes on the property because, is it being maintained? Is there a leak that's not being reported? Because, with insurance, if a leak is going on longer than 14 days, an insurance carrier could very well deny a claim, especially that's when mold starts getting involved and you start getting some really nasty high repairs.
Some carriers will actually even give discounts if a property management is used too. So that's kind of a benefit also.
People that live out of state, that own rental properties here in Arizona, we have a lot of clients that are out of state, and they have properties here in state, whether it's a secondary property or a rental property. And there are limited options when you don't use property management for a rental property when you live out of state, and you can't keep eyes on the property. You can't do the proper inspections that are necessary
You're
to make
not
sure
there
that
for
things
you
are in
move
control.
in. Yeah, you're not there for move in, move out. So how do you know if the property is good and ready to go?
Maintenance. It's important, whether it's your primary home or a secondary home or an investment property, making sure that it's well maintained. If the roof is old and you're expecting insurance to cover it, that's not how insurance works. Insurance is going to cover a claim if everything's in good working order. But if the roof is in bad shape and someone refuses to fix it, and then there's a claim, if the roof is 95% of its lifetime, it's down to just hanging on by a thread, and something happens, the home isn't maintained, and you might run the risk of not having insurance to cover the claim.
It's important too to have your tenants in the home also have renters insurance as well.
Yes.
That covers their own personal property as well as their liability.
I also recommend that we push for or that we require is pet insurance. So
you're talking about liability on the pet.
The liability for
Okay. Well, you're saying that you need to make sure that all of your tenants, I should say, have insurance to cover their animal if it were to bite someone, because a dog bite, it's a big liability claim, and so it's really important to make sure that you have coverage so that, first of all, the tenant is covered against lawsuits, but that's the homeowner's home, and they can still be held liable too. I'm talking specifically to those that do not have property management right now.
Yeah.
So whether you're a client or not of ours, like me personally, I would not have a landlord home without making my tenant have renter's insurance, because that's the first defense against any lawsuits. If they bring somebody onto the property and someone gets hurt or whatever, you want them to cover as much as possible before hitting your policy. You may think people, you may think, oh, it's my buddy, I'm renting it to him, I trust him. You don't know who's on the property. Just have those defenses in line so that the first line of defense is the renter's insurance policy. That's a must, in my opinion. If you are a client of ours and you don't use property management, Jessica and I would highly recommend that you call Jessica Sabye and talk about that, and hopefully utilize Patriot Property Management, because throughout this whole discussion, we listed reasons why. In my opinion, the biggest reasons to use property management is get that first line of vetting, get the right tenant, make sure that you're protected against all the legal ramifications of all the things that could go wrong, all the things that come up. You don't have to worry about that. There's the insurance benefits that come along with using property management. So our recommendation is to reach out to Jessica. We'll provide some contact information so that you can reach out to her directly, or you can just contact us and we can put you in contact with Jessica. We can do an introduction email so that you can have a discussion with them. And if you do decide to use Jessica Sabye for property management, then please let us know so that we can make sure we update your policy.